Hello, it's Esperanza from Soltera Creative, a channel all about art, art things, art instruction, and art stuff. Today I wanted to talk about my beautiful piece called PumpKim. I created her because I went to a virtual Halloween party at my old job and I thought we were pumpkin carving and I was the only one who brought a pumpkin. So I ended up doing like a mini hey, watch me do art, and while everybody's having a conversation and doing all sorts of things. I thought it was like the perfect like Halloween thing and all that stuff. Now, in preparation for this video, I probably did this. Oh, my voice. I did this carving maybe a couple of years ago, and I'm now getting to it. I actually released it in my previous channel, but I decided to re-release it with more information about it. So I'm gonna just read off some pumpkin facts because, we need to know food history. Why? Because it's actually deeply related to culture, and it's been a new passion of mine. So pumpkins are actually one of the very, very, very first cultivated and domesticated plants in the indigenous Americas. Its cultivation is long over 9,000 years ago, even before the cultivation of corn or beans. They began in the Oaxaca region and certain parts of the United States, the southern parts of the United States. Quick note, what we know as the United States as of now. So they were grown by several indigenous people of Mexico, as well as indigenous people of the southern states, or what we now know as the southern states. Tribes like Los Apaches, the Navajo, the Hopi, and several other tribes harvested this. And the oldest example of the orange pumpkin was actually found in Oaxaca, Mexico. It is about dated around 10,000 years prior to the appearance of corn or beans. Now, the whole carving into a pumpkin actually didn't start in the Americas. It originated in Ireland and Scotland to honor a Celtic tradition, All Hallows Eves. But the difference was your jack-o'-lantern was not your jack-o'-lantern. It was actually started on turnips and potatoes, and placing them around windows or door stoops to scare evil little spirits away. It wasn't until folks from there immigrated to the Americas and started using pumpkins as the vegetable to make these scary faces. Something else that indigenous people use squashes or pumpkins. Pumpkin is a squash, part of the squash family, and yes, squashes are fruits. Were used as containers. I know this particular, I think they're called acorn squashes, those curvy ones. My mom used to tell me all the time that a lot of folks used to use that as their water bottles, and I was like, cool, I want one. You can actually make them, but it's not the type of channel for it. So why is it so important to Thanksgiving or Halloween and all these holidays? Well, you see, natives ended up sharing this is one of the crops that natives shared with the colonizers before we knew what they were up to. Again, that's all I'm gonna say. I know. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyways, like a lot of plants indigenous to the Americas, both in certain folks like to take credit for it, and it's become kind of like this all-American icon. And the reality is, yes, to Native Americans, it should be attributed to Native people and indigenous people of the Americas. However, that's not how we view it. And I think it's important to see this particular video as an entry point of consider a lot of our crops and where they come from, and how, and who actually came up with how to harvest them and produce them and doing so in a healthy and environmentally conscious way. I wish I had more time to talk about it and research it and stuff, but unfortunately I don't. And this was all from a quick read on Google. And part of the thing was, it was just the fact that I carved a pumpkin and I was like, I wonder where jack-o'-lanterns come from. And the fact that I made this video, otherwise I would have never known. But there are actually a lot of other crops like vanilla and corn, beans, and like, you know, a lot of crops are indigenous and native and traditional native foods. However, with how we sensationalize how we consume cooking and food channels and content in general, we forget to attribute the people who helped us understand how is food made, how do we make this food edible. And you know, now that I know this about pumpkins, it's actually given me context of, hey, there is a lot of history to the foods that we consume. They didn't just appear out of nowhere, and I think that is such a beautiful thing. There are similar stories that I give in my other channel about like coffee and chocolate, for example, and how a lot of the things that we consume today come from indigenous people of the Americas, pretty much anywhere around the world that prior to colonization, like we wouldn't have had. So although I have very little time left, I encourage you to keep looking up things about pumpkins and things about the food that you consume. I have been doing this a little bit more frequently on crops and understanding crops, especially as a business owner of a coffee company as well. And really, there is a fascinating history tied to basically all these traditions that we almost unconsciously do. I love researching history and foods and just like how things happen, because it gives us a historical context and dimension to histories that we are fed, especially here in like our schooling system in the United States, that completely give a different perspective of how stories are told. Because at the end of the day, history is a story that is being told and retold. Much of what we consume is generally written from one perspective. And so I hope that this video gave you just a little bit of insight. I think I'm gonna leave it there because there's just so much about pumpkins that I'm gonna read about now. This is how I'm gonna spend my October, and I hope that this also gives you like a little insight on pumpkins, and I will see you next time. Oh, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, do you like stuff like this? Should I make more? Let me know. All right, bye.